for people who are familiar with the map of Queens, that big white spot in Queens, white being the lowest voter turnout and blue being the most solid voter turnout. So if you see areas of Manhattan, the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, they have the most solid voter turnout. North Queens has a very solid voter turnout. South Brooklyn has a solid voter turnout. The areas with white have the least voter turnout. And if you look at it, the area with a lot of white, the least voter turnout in New York City is that little white hole in South Queens right there, and that happens to be the South Ozone Park, Richmond Hill, Little Guyana community. We have the lowest voter turnout in New York City, one of the lowest voter turnouts in New York City. So if we want to be taken more seriously as a community, have resources delivered to us, we have to get those numbers up. And this is not just an issue that was there in 2023. We have some articles from the New York Times, which, Devin, if you could pull up the one that talks about 100,000 Guyanese, and that how resources don't really go to them. Yeah, the Guyanese. This is an article from 1996, so nearly 30 years ago. The New York Times was covering this, that the Guyanese population swelled to 100,000 in Richmond Hill, Ozone Park, in Jamaica, but that the needs for resources, be it job training centers or to pave roads or other things, went to other power bases rather than the Guyanese area or the West Indian area. And part of that is because they didn't vote as much, right? And that's why we had a lack of social programs that was talked about there. But that issue hasn't changed from then to now, because unfortunately the community is still has that pattern of low turnout and not being interested. And I think we have another piece of that article as well, which talks about them being more interested in politics back home rather than politics here. That even though that they've come decades ago and worked hard for economic foothold, we're very active in the business community, et cetera, but we've devoted little effort to local politics, preferring to keep track of politics back home. And this was an article written by the New York Times 30 years ago, but it could have been written just yesterday about this community. So, Mr. Baldeo, I think you have possibly more, on the ground experience of politics in this area than maybe anyone. What are your thoughts on how the apathy has just continued? Right, this is an article from nearly 30 years ago. You nearly won in that state senate race nearly 20 years ago, but that this sort of apathy has just continued since. Just curious your thought on that lasting issue.
Yes, let me address the audience there, who's mainly Caribbean, South Asian. We have got to do better than this. The map that Rousat has shown you shows the areas that voted most are the most influential and affluential areas. You have Bayside, and you have many other areas, Howard Beach, Glendale, you have the Upper East Side. These areas vote. And it's not a coincidence that they're more developed and they get more attention. It is because you have lacked in our civic duty of going out and voting, which is a free franchise and a spiritual divine right that was given to you by the Constitution. Many of you, most of you didn't have that right at home. You never voted. You left your countries and you came here, whether it's from Pakistan or Guyana or Trinidad or wherever you came for a better life. And voting is free. We don't even have early voting in these countries. And yet you can vote early and you have time in which to do that. You have at least 2 weeks where you can go to the poll site and vote early and open till 8 in the evening. You have no excuse. Saturday, Sunday also. And they have so many poll sites. You don't have to line up in these long lines like they have in various other countries. This is the greatest country on earth. And you have come to the greatest country, but you have shortchanged yourself. Running for office doesn't mean that you will empower Rousat or Baldeo or Mr. King or Mr. Meeks or whosoever is there, or the congressman and so forth. It is empowering yourself, because at the end of the day, they will not listen to you unless you have a voice, unless you make demands, unless you're going to approach them respectfully and ask for things to be done. And politicians are human beings. And I don't mean this to Mr. King or anybody else. Politicians look at where the votes are. They look at where the support comes from. And if you don't become a player in this, then you're wasting your time in America. You're depriving yourself. You're cutting yourself off at the legs and truly living the American dream. This is not only about money and prosperity. This is about your children's future. This is about your own development and progress here. Money cannot buy influence and power. In most cases like this, representation does. You have to have representation. You have to have a repay of your tax dollars. That is mean you got to be involved, you got to encourage others to vote, and you've got to go out and vote. The numbers we have are atrocious, and it's a grave disservice to our community, and we ought to be ashamed of ourselves. You've got to go out and show, because you know what? The numbers do come out. The statistics today, they draft the map like Shusat showed you, and they shared the maps. We are white in this area, meaning that we have not even scratched the surface. Other areas are blue, meaning that they have voted and they have made their imprint on the map of America. And that is where it counts. It comes from city council, from state assembly, state senate, the government, the presidency, or anything that occurs in America, where they build schools, where they give jobs, where they give wages, where they give more police patrols, give more policemen to police these areas, give holidays to the people there. Look, for Diwali, we had to struggle 20 years until we finally got it. So what I'm saying to you simply is this. Everything is related to your vote. Many folks said, oh, you know what? What me gonna vote for? What me gonna vote for this person for? That is all rubbish. You are talking nonsense. You have to go out and vote. Voting does not cost you. Like I said, sometimes we think in order to feel there's value in something, you have to put on top dollar. Nobody's asking you for top dollar. Nobody's even asking you for a single dollar, not a dime. And you need to have the common sense to know that you have to go out and vote, because voting is your right. Voting is your power. You need to go out and vote, and proudly do that. And when it comes to things in Guyana, nobody's saying you mustn't be aware of Guyana and its leaders and so on and support who you want. But charity begins at home. You live in America. You want to see your homes are not foreclosed. You want to see churches built. You want to see schools built. You want to see hospital schools. You want to see policemen patrolling the streets. That comes with your vote, and it's free. So all I'm asking you and begging you at this time of Diwali, to throw light over darkness, to have faith, to exercise your franchise, to lead by example, to go out and vote. Spend those 5 minutes and go out and vote. Go to Resorts World. Go to the Richmond Library. Go to Queensborough Hall. Go to all the centers. Look it up online. They're all around. Put in your zip code. And then if you didn't make it, then go out and vote on that day. Because no more should you be saying, look at Liberty Avenue. It's overspilling with garbage. There's no cans there to put in garbage. They don't even pick up the garbage sometimes, you know. For you to get the mayor's attention is to ask them, what have you done for me? What have you done for me, Mr. Mayor? What are you doing for me? You know, now Mr. King has spent his time coming to this community, and we're grateful for that, because people now see politicians running for office have got to make the pilgrimage to Richmond Hill. It spent a long time, 3 decades of work and fighting and registering voters and trying to bring it to this level. And now we have to make sure that we can take this to the highest level, where we can be, in order for us to be true Americans, we have to go out and vote, because our children fight and die for this country. We are great patriots. We pay our taxes. We have an equal stake like everybody. So like Cruzata always says, don't complain if you don't vote. Shut your mouth, so to speak, in Guyanese parlance. Don't complain if you don't vote. You have to go out and vote. It's free. You have a duty, and you must do it. You're the ones going to be benefit. People are not going in there. The candidate just said he's not going in there for a lifetime. He's already had a career, but he wants to give back. Everybody, you know, folks like us want to give back. So you must go out and exercise your franchise and make sure that you do your civic duty and vote, because voting is what alienates you. What empowers you. Many people have died for the right to vote. There was a time when you couldn't even vote. You could not even think of voting because you were a minority. And now that you have that right, don't complain. You have sidelined yourself and categorized yourself as a Dalit or an untouchable. You have put yourself in the lowest caste, because by refusing to vote, you have condemned yourself to a life of failures, a life of not being heard, not being seen. And America was built on a participating democracy. Get off the fence and vote. Democracy is not a spectator sport, Guyanese people. Go out and vote and help us to have a better and stronger community.
Thank you, Mr. Baldeo. Now, just to add on to a few things that Mr. Baldeo addressed, he mentioned Diwali. Obviously, we wish a happy Diwali to everyone who will be celebrating. And I want to highlight that this year is actually the first year that Diwali will be a public school holiday in New York City, and that is the result of years of community activism. So that is something that we wanted to note as well. Now, Mr. Baldeo made a very important point just now that we have, for the first time in I think many years, we have members of both parties coming out, reaching out to this community. And that is the sign of how a community can grow in its political power, and also, getting resources for itself as well. When a community shows that it's potentially a swing area that can go either way, or that both parties have to reach out to, both parties will put attention into it, and eventually, over time, put resources into it. And that is something that this community needs, because when it's only in the hands of one and can be taken for granted, you don't get all the resources that you may want. Like if we think on the national level, if you're in a solid blue state, how many times does the president come out to you? If you're in a solid red state, how many times does that president go out to you and deliver for you? But if you're in one of those swing states, like what Florida used to be, or let's say Pennsylvania and Michigan and others are now, the presidents or presidential candidates are there all the time, promising all sorts of resources to them, because they know that, those people are going to vote. They can tip the election either way, and I need them, so I need to give resources to them. And within New York, where we have such a strong West Indian diaspora, we can be that swing community that can get resources because of our political power and attention, because we have the strength in numbers. We just have to use it. We have the potential to be a Goliath, but we're acting like a David. So
Well
I'll we can give Mr. King the chance. It's 8:52 and our program goes till 9. So we'll start to wrap up slowly. But I want to give Mr. King the chance to give a final get out the vote message to this West Indian community. What are the issues you want them to focus on, and why they should cast their ballot for Paul King in South Queens this year. So, Mr. King, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And then as soon as I'm done, I'm gonna jet, because I also have to be somewhere at 9 o'clock. But first off, I want to compliment Mr. Baldeo. That was eloquent and passionate and important. This is kind of the divine right to vote that comes from our Constitution, but our rights also, we all say, come from God. Yeah, we don't want to take them for granted. And